Today you will be starting your final project on Vietnam. I realize I will not be here to help get you started on the summative, so that is why I made a video explaining how you do the Vietnam dialogue summative. So in order to get further instructions and examples beyond the worksheet you received, go on to Blackboard so you can use your app. You don't have to go through Safari like I'm doing right now, or like I said, you can use your app. So go to US history, go to Vietnam, because that's the unit we're on, and then click on Vietnam dialogue, because that's the activity you're doing today. And here it gives you the assignment, so the directions are number one where it says click here. Then it gives you two examples. It gives you the Malcolm X and MLK example we did with the dialogue. It also gives the Miley example, which we didn't do in class, but it's a good example of how to create a dialogue. Also remember we did the sit-ins, we did the Little Rock 9. What you're basically creating is a discussion. You're only doing this with the people at your table group, so now you can't switch around and work with other people. You have to work with your table group. Each person in your table group will have a role. So if you look at the instructions, I'm just going to open those up real quick. You can choose any of these roles, but you're not limited to being a draft dodger or Lyndon Johnson. You can make up a name of a soldier. It's up to you. But in your table groups, you're going to be creating a dialogue that describes the Vietnam War. Each person in your group will take on a role. Your discussion should at least have each person in your group speaking for a minute. That doesn't mean that they have 1 minute of all lines. Basically, if I added up each time they spoke, so maybe they talked for 10 seconds throughout it 10 different times to equal their amount of time that they need to have, that's fine. But basically, your whole dialogue should be about 4 minutes if you have 4 people in it, 3 minutes if you have 3 people, 5 minutes if you have 5 people in it. Some essential questions you should be answering when you're having this discussion back and forth. Think of this discussion as if I asked you to talk to me about Vietnam and we're going back and forth about what happened. That's what you're basically doing, only you're doing it with people who experienced Vietnam. So your essential questions are somewhere in your conversation, you should talk about the roots of the war, why the war started, what this conflict was about, who some of their leaders were. So basically, I'm asking you to talk about how it went from being a French colony to being a Japanese control to being back to the French wanting to control this colony, then how they were independent, then how the Geneva Accords happened, and how the whole war started with the Gulf of Tonkin resolution. And what are some main turning points or events that happened during the war, and how did the home front respond to this war? So how did the media portray the war? What were some violent events that happened during Vietnam? So My Lai, the bombing of Cambodia, the Kent State Massacre, what was happening with the counter-revolution. So the counter-revolution, remember we listened to some of the music that was written about people being against the draft and who individuals were who were fortunate enough to not have to be part of the draft. It should also contain something to do with the tactics used, such as Agent Orange, napalm, search and destroy missions, the guerrilla warfare tactics they used, and then, of course, your conversation should end with how did the war come to the end and what does Vietnam look like today. Now, not every single essential question needs to be answered. You could choose one of these areas and go in depth with it, or you could do more of a broad conversation about all of them. It's up to you what topics you cover, but it needs to be describing the Vietnam War. It's up to you which roles you choose, but it should be a conversation, and by the end, I should be able to tell that you understand what happened during the Vietnam War. Format, you're going to be using Google Documents, so one person in your group will create the Google document and then share it with the fellow members in the group. Make sure I can tell, maybe use different colors of font so I can clearly tell who's going back and forth. Make sure you label them kind of like I do in the examples, so I know who's speaking which lines. You will be presenting this to me. That's what we'll be doing the rest of the week. So you'll have all class period today to work on developing your dialogue. You'll have part of the class period the following day I see you, so whether that be Wednesday or Thursday. So you'll have 1.5 class periods to develop this, and then the second half of class, I will be going group to group, and you'll be reading your dialogue to me back and forth between your group members. So it's on Google Docs. You'll share also your Google Doc with me as well as your fellow classmates. When I say share it with me, you're going to submit it on Blackboard through Submit Assignments. So if you go back, there's a tab on the bottom of your Blackboard where it says Submit Assignments, and you're just going to, sorry, it closed me out. You're just going to submit the form through Submit Assignments there on the website on Blackboard. So it'll have you select which assignment you're submitting for. It'll have you tell me your group members' names, and that's where you'll submit the assignment. Sorry, my Blackboard kind of closed me out there. So now that you know that you're taking on a role, you have to answer these essential questions. You're creating it in a Google document. You're submitting it to me on Blackboard. That's how you're sharing it with me. Please don't just click the share button and type in my name. I'll get tons of emails. Submit it to me on Blackboard. I gave you an example right here. So Johnson, we need to stop communism from spreading, because if one country falls to communism, all others will too, like a domino. I'm going to send the Maddox to the Gulf of Tonkin to monitor what is happening. So when I make that statement, I know you understand the domino theory. I know you understand what happened with the Gulf of Tonkin resolution. Then Ho Chi Minh says, shoot down that ship. They have no right to be involved in our civil conflict. We just want to be independent. They need to leave us alone. Johnson says, Congress, North Vietnam torpedoed our destroyer ship Maddox. We need to bomb North Vietnam to stop them from supplying the Viet Cong. We also need to send troops in to keep communism from spreading to the south. So it shows me you understand where communism is in Vietnam, you understand what the Viet Cong are, you understand what happened in order to get us into the war, and then Congress says, okay, President Johnson, you have our approval to send the troops. So right there, that's 3 different characters. If you have a group of 3, your conversation can go back and forth between those 3. Now, you could also have individuals in your group playing more than one role so that you can include more people in the discussion. Just make sure you know who's playing what role and who's saying what line. So like I said, you're going to have about the first 20 minutes to half an hour the second day to work on this. You have all class period today, and then I'll be coming group to group on that last day, having you read your dialogue to me. In order to get more examples, it's right on Blackboard here. I give you 2 different examples if you need more on how to create the conversation. So please take this summative seriously. It's worth 90% of your grade. Include all group members and make sure you share it with me on Blackboard.